Okay, here we are back in class, Math 1101. This is the lecture scheduled for April 26 or 27, depending on what section you're in. And we've covered this example in some of the classes, and we haven't finished them in others. But if you remember, we did get to the point where we had 7 voters in an election, no coalitions, 1 person each, and 4 candidates, A, B, C, and D. And the first one for plurality system is the easiest one. This is just first choice only. So if I can get this pen to work. For some reason it doesn't want to kick in. Not sure why that is. Oh yeah, because I have to hit draw. I had it on erase. So first choice means that A is the winner because A has 3, and we already said that. But what about the top 2? Well, we had C winning 2 votes, and A, of course, won 3, so we have a playoff between A and C. Okay, well, that's fair enough. So top 2 means that we have to have the top 2 go head-to-head, and that means B and D are eliminated. So let's go ahead and eliminate them. From the first voter, B and D are eliminated. The second voter, B and D are gone, and just continue just like that, eliminating B and D, only leaving A versus C every step of the way. Okay, so in other words, when we have the head-to-head runoff between A and C, kind of like Condorcet, A has won the first one, A has won the second one, A has won the third one, but then C wins the fourth one, A wins the fourth one over here, number 5, so they've got their majority already, and then they won a fifth one, but then C wants a couple, 1, 2, the last one. So C got 2 of them, A had 5 of them, so it looks like A wins the playoff, so to speak, between the top 2 runoff system, and that's indeed what they say in the explanation for problem number 2. So first place winner was A, candidate C was second with 2, but in a runoff with A and C, A wins with 5 votes to 2, as we just demonstrated. But something strange happens in the next problem. The elimination runoff system is what I call kind of like Survivor, in that you have one being voted off the island every single week, and similar story with many other reality shows that have eliminations and all. So anyway, the thing is, you'd want to eliminate the very last place. The idea is not to be the loser, but as they say in number 3, and the answer here, B and D got 1 vote each. They're both eliminated. Both of them are eliminated, so we don't mess around. We don't need to split them. We'll just say, okay, you're both tied for last. You're both gone. I don't think that would hardly ever happens on reality TV. And because of that, it reverts back to the prior method. So we get A winning again, just like before. A won, and A wins again because elimination is equal, in this rare case, to the top 2. Let me just say top 2. So this is not going to happen again, but it happened here, and it did save us a little time because we didn't mess around with keeping the top 3. Didn't need to, because the bottom 2 were tied, and we just got rid of both of them at the same time. That's a bit rare, but we just thought we'd show you that. What about the voter count? Well, the voter count is the point-by-point basis. Let me go back and assign points. Remember, you start off with the bottom level getting 0 points, and you climb the ladder up until then. In other words, you go 3, 2, 1, 0, or 0, 1, 2, 3. Either way. But the point is, A got 3 votes for first place. That means they'll get 3 points each time. Let's see how they've arranged that in the board account. Yeah, so 3 first place votes. That's 3 times 3 right there. They got 1 second place vote. That's that point value there. And they got 3 third place votes. Let's double check that. Yep, 3 third place votes there, and there. 1 point each. Well, the point is, so to speak, you get 9 plus 2 plus 3. That's 14 points. And as you can see, that will be the winner. What about B? B, of course, got 1 winner, so they get 1 3-pointer. They got a whole bunch of second places, though. They got 4 of those. So let's see, we've got 4 second place. But ironically, second place gets 2 votes. You can't count on that, but just happened to land this way. And they got a third place vote, and that counts for 2 points. There's your, well, got a couple of third place votes. I'm sorry, 2 third place votes, 1 point each. That's why it's 2 times 1. Notice they're not even messing with the fourth places. They're just not even going to say anything about it. B did not have a fourth place vote. What about, as we bounce back to C, C got a couple of 3-pointers. They did win 2 elections, as we said. Voter 4, voter 7 did vote for C outright, but they were dragged down by the fact they couldn't do much else. They got a third place vote and a whole bunch of fourth place votes, and the fourth place votes don't count for anything. Let's see, they got a couple of thirds, I'm sorry, there and there. So when we have a couple of thirds, that would be 2 1-points apiece. 1 point for third place. So 2/3 means 2 times 1. I just missaid that. And of course, 0 times a whole bunch of last place votes. That doesn't matter. Got 3 last places. Counts for nothing. You could probably skip that step. How about D, just to finish it off? B got 1 winner. Everybody got 1 winner. So here's D's winning vote, and that's 3 points, 1 times 3. And what else they get? They got a couple of second place votes, and that's 2 points each, so 2 times 2 is what they're saying here. And that's all they got. They didn't get anything else that was worth mentioning, because D got a lot of last places that we don't care about. Well, anyway, they got a total of 7 points. So 14 to 13 to 8 to 7. A is also the winner of the board account. Now, the Condorcet winner, I did take a lot of time to do this in class before, and I typed it in. And not everybody got a chance to see it, though, so I guess I can review it because we'll be looking at Condorcet on the final. I think it's pretty safe to say that. So let me see if I can run this through. I'm going to need to put a lot of room here. First of all, let's verify what they said. What they did was they kind of cheated in a way. They figured, oh yeah, B's the winner. Let's just see why B's the winner. So B beats A 4-3. Let's see why. B beats A. Well, let's see. I probably ought to erase first. This is becoming very messy, so let's just erase. And I'll look at the situation as we get back to drawing. So does B beat A here? Nope. Well, actually, no. A wins. So looking at A versus B only. I'm not going to cross them out. I'm just going to look at the A versus B. A beats B again twice. A loses here. B wins. B wins again, so it's 2-2. B wins again, so it's 3-2. A ties it up 3-3. Finally, B goes ahead. So B wins the A-B vote, as they said, 4-3. So I'll just circle that. Let's go to the BC. I'm not going in order. I'm going to use their little jump start to continue. Now, what about B versus C? So we're looking at, first of all, AB, and then we'll do BC, all the ones that B's involved in. Okay, so BC. B wins the first one. It wins the second one. It wins the third one. But it loses the second one, or the fourth one, rather. So it's 3-2 B, and 4-2 B. B is 1 already. 4-1 B, rather. And then B wins again, 5-1, but it loses the last one. So it's 5-2. B beats C. And that's what they say. B beats C. 5 head-to-head battles, head-to-head outcomes, 5-2. How about B and D is the only other one that B is involved in. And let's see if it wins. And if it does, if it wins every match it's involved in, it's the Condorcet winner. So now look at B versus D. Only B versus D. B wins this one. D loses the next one, though, so it's 1-1. B wins the third one, 2-1 B. And B wins the next one, so it's 3-1 B. B loses the one versus D on the fifth vote, so it's 3-2 B. Loses the next one. D beats again, so it's tied up. But finally, B beats D at the end, so B beats D 4-3, so to speak. And that means that's sufficient to show that B is the Condorcet winner. But I think it's only fair to show you the others in a matter of completeness. The ones that we didn't cover were, say, AC. Let's try A versus C. A beats C in the first round. A beats C in the second round. A beats C in the third round. But it loses the fourth. It beats it in the fifth round, so it's head 4-1. The next one it wins, so it's 5-1, and then it loses. So A wins 5-1. I'll just say that with the score, 5-2 rather, because it did lose the last one, A versus C. So, yeah, this is the last one we looked at. So A is the winner on that one. How about AD? And then finally, the last one we haven't done is CD. So I'll look at those just for completeness as I did in some of the other classes. So A beats D in the first round. A beats D again. A beats D a third time in a row. A beats D 4 times in a row. You could probably just say A is the winner already. But it loses the fifth vote. It beats it in the sixth vote. And it loses in the seventh. So once again, A is the winner, 5-2. And what about C versus D? Well, okay, C beats D in the first vote. It loses in the second vote. It wins in the third vote, so it's head, and then it goes ahead even further with the fourth vote, so C is ahead 3-1. And then it loses the fifth vote, so it's 3-2. Loses the next one, it's tied up 3-3, and at the end, C beats D, so C wins 4-3. But for you to be a Condorcet winner, you have to win all of your battles. There are 6 total battles here, 4 times, well, actually 3 times 2 times 1. We don't need to get into that. So what you'd have to do is notice the ones that you're involved in, whether it's 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 6. Those are the only cases we'll ever show you. And then if you win all 3 of your battles, as they say on the next slide, B is the Condorcet winner because they won every battle it was involved with. It sat out 3 out of the 6 battles. It doesn't care about those. Anyway, spent a lot of time on that. Wish I'd covered it in all the sections, but there's your review for those of you who already covered it. And here's a little something we'll come back to briefly to finish up 8.2, but it's not really testable. The Condorcet winner criterion is very much in favor of Condorcet, and he or she should be the winner of the entire election. That's what their feeling is. Okay. But then we also have another condition, the independence of irrelevant alternative states. If A wins an election and B loses, and then another election follows in which no voter changes their preference concerning A and B. So no voter changes amongst A and B. We don't care about C, D, E, and F. But B should still lose to A no matter what happens concerning the other candidates. They do, however, show a bit of a paradox here at the end of 8.2, which we can get into when C comes along, and we'll bring that up later. And then Arrow's impossibility theorem, as we just hit the highlights of the end of this section. If there are 3 or more candidates, which is all we're talking about now, there's no voting system other than dictatorship for which the Condorcet winner criterion and the second postulate, the independence of relevant alternatives hold. You can't get them both to work. It's very weird. But we'll have more to say about that another day. There it is on the slideshow. And as we turn the page into 8.3, the second to last or penultimate section in the class, we have 8.3 called Fair Division. What is a fair share? And so the book does mention many cases for which this is be relevant. And, we're not just dividing up cash. That would be really easy. In fact, the book actually talks about an article about a Tiger Woods divorce settlement. Tiger Woods been in the news recently, so you can read that if you'd like. But divorces and inheritances in which goods have to be divided equitably, as equally as possible, is the main topic here. So whenever there's stuff besides cash, although cash may be involved, it can be, an interesting way to go. We have a couple of methods at least to show you. And this is called the divide and choose procedure. So A just gives you some highlights of some methods that can be used. One person divides the items into 2 parts, and the other person chooses which part he or she wants. Okay. And so I guess the subtitle below the divide and choose procedure would be the lone divider method, because apparently this can go off into a couple different directions. So this particular method, called the lone divider, applies this procedure to parties of 3 only. There could be more. If we just have 3, there's a couple of cases that could happen. Person 1 does the dividing. It divides the assets into 3 parts, but persons 2 and 3 then choose between the piles. Okay. If they choose differently, I, or person 1, gets the remaining pile. So the idea is to carve it up as equally as possible, because if you give away 2 really good ones, you're going to get number 3. But as you perceive it, if it's all roughly equal, then you'll get whatever's left over. There will not be a debate. They'll just simply choose, and they'll choose amongst themselves. And if they choose differently, it's basically done. But here's the thing. If they choose the same, oh, that's different. then say one of them clearly looks like the best pile, that's a little different story. So number 1 chooses which pile they want, and then 2 and 3 mix the remaining piles and then perform the divide and choose procedure amongst themselves, amongst just 2 parts. So yeah, that's kind of different. So if they choose the same, person 1 then gets to choose the pile they want. So this is number 1, not I, but number 1, which pile they want. So the idea is to make it as fair as possible, and then you'll get to be the picker, which may be slightly better, at least in your view. And then 2 and 3 will just have to kind of mix them up, the remaining piles, and divide it up any way they can according to the divide and choose procedure. Just one more round of it, but then they've got to debate amongst themselves. You've already got your pile. So that's how that can turn out. We have this thing called the adjusted winner procedure, and they do mention a couple of other minor methods, which we're not going to worry about. But the adjusted winner procedure, which starts off the second little section of 8.3, I call it Part B. 2 people assign points to bid on each item that's involved in an inheritance or divorce, assigning a total of 100 points. So people may not put the same weight. In fact, they probably will not put the same weight on each item. We'll only give you only examples with about 5 or so or less things to divide up. So initial division of the items gives each item to the person offering the highest bid. So it's like perhaps 5 separate bids. And if it works out to be roughly the same number of points, you may be already done. But what we'll have to do, though, is we'll give you an example pretty quickly here. The division is then adjusted based on the ratio of the bids for each item. So each person eventually will receive a group of items whose bid totals are the same for each person, and this nearly always involves dividing up something at the end. And in some cases, it may not be very easily divisible, but at least in the examples they've given, yes, it can be divisible, but we'll get into that detail later. So here's the example that they give us, and this one is found in the book. I'm looking at page 561. Suppose my sister and I want to divide an inheritance, and the assets consist of a guitar, a jewelry collection, a car, a small library, and a certain amount of cash, which, by the way, is very easy to divide. So to start the procedure, each of us takes 100 points, not dollars, but points, and divides those points among the assets. So if you want to make sure you get something that you really, really have to have, put close to 100 points on it. Of course, you're going to probably lose all the others. But anyway, let's take a look at what the example has to offer us. In a division of assets, point values of 2 siblings follow, and here is the example they give us. Okay, so with the guitar, I put down 35 points, but the sister only put down 10. And jewelry, it was a tie, 10 points each. With the car, I put down 20, but she put down 40. I'm ahead in the library, as I put 15 points down, and she put 10. With the cash, I don't know how much cash it is, they didn't say. I put down 20 points for cash, and she put down 30 points for cash. So there's an initial round where I get the guitar because I bid on the guitar. Let me push this again. And the library, 15 to 10. Yep. Okay, and then the sister gets the car, 40 to 20. Sister gets the cash, 30 to 20. And then there's a tie. The jewelry is tied. And by the way, we can keep score now because I got 35 plus 15 points. That's 50 points. The sister got 40 plus 30 for a total of 70 points. So now we look at the ties, if there are any. And just here's the way it goes. It's going to come out even in the end anyway. It looks like it's becoming lopsided, but actually it doesn't. It goes to the point leader, my sister. So now the sister gets more points, but that just means that there's more to divide up. So it does really come out in the wash. It may look weird at first. So to speak, she gets 10 more points from the jewelry, and that's 80% satisfied. I'm only 50% satisfied. There's got to be a meeting place in the middle somewhere. Can't just average them. It may not work out that way. So the points must be adjusted. In other words, my sister owes me something. The question is, what is it and how much? So to make the values even, the sister must share some of her property, some of the ones she has, either the jewelry or the car or the cash. Looks like I've already got the guitar in the library locked up. That's probably not going to really matter. But to make the values even, my sister shares property. So we have this ratio. The leader's property over the trailer's property. In this case, it's sister over my bid. But it's always leader over trailer. This only involves two people. So let's go to the next slide and see what happens. Okay. Point leader always goes on top. And so we arrange the ratios in increasing order. The ones that are still up for grabs, we can't look at the other slide at the same time. But it was a tie for the jewelry. So the ratio is actually 1. 10 versus 10. So that indicates it's 1. By the way, the ratio will be greater than or equal to 1. It cannot be less than 1 because the leader, as we said, goes on top. If you look at the bottom of the screen there. So you can't have a number less than 1. 1's the smallest it can be, that's a tie. So the cash, she put down 30, I put down 20, ratio of 1.5, ratio for car. 40 to 20 is a 2 to 1 ratio. We go and put them in increasing order. Excuse me. So we start with the smallest one, and then we just continue until we get to the end. We probably will not get to the end. So first, the jewelry goes right back. Seems like he should give the jewelry to the lower one, but I guess sometimes that'll change the leader, and they don't want that to happen. They already know the leader. They want to start with the leader, and this will not change the ranking. That's got to be the thinking behind it. So now instead of 80-50, so let's write this down again. It was 50 to 80. So me and sis. Okay, so then I'll put a little 2 in there, and so sister loses 10, I gain 10, and it's still not completely fair, although it's better. She's still ahead of me 70 to 60. Okay, fine, but that's not really exactly fair. So what we have to do, since we've taken care of the jewelry, moved it over to my end of the scale, we then go for the cash. So that's the next one we look at. We will probably not get to the car. We'll almost never get to the bottom. Well, we could, but we probably will not get to the bottom of the list. So the critical item changes the point leader, and it's very easy to see that. If I got my cash, I would add in 20 more points, and she would lose 30 more points. Notice it's lopsided, but add 20, that'd be up to 80. If you subtract 30, it'd be to 40, and the numbers aren't so important, but it changes the point leader. That's the main important thing here. So now it's the critical item, the cash, that we have to deal with. And luckily, cash is easily divisible, so we got lucky on that one. But let's see how it turns out. The equation for dividing the critical item is as follows. And notice we did mention there's a little bit of algebra. So one of them has to come up. The lower one will come up a little bit, and the leader will lose a little bit. So the way it works in English is we take my score plus P% of the cash, the critical item, equaling the sister's score minus the same percent of her cash bid. Notice these cash bids may be different. So whatever, so anyway, the sister, well, we start with my score. So we start with the loser, the trailer, I should say, and that's 60. That's me. And I put in 20 points for the P. Let's take another look. For cash, I gave 20 points. Sister gave 30 points. So we're working on a little bit of a different scale. So we'll add in 20 P for my additional situation. Now, sister's points has 70 points. There's no P attached. But if she loses part of it, she will lose 30 points per P. So she'll lose a little bit faster. But the idea is to set them equal to each other. And let's go ahead and do that. I think they do that in the book. But let's go ahead and show it to you here. My points plus a certain amount of P, which I assign 20 points to, must equal 70 points for sister. So personal touch here. Minus 30 times P, because she put more points down. So now it's just a matter of figuring with the numbers here. I'll add 30P to each side and get 50P plus 60 equals 70. Now I'll subtract 60 and get 50P equals 10. P would equal 10 over 50, and that happens to equal 0.20, 20%. So 20% of the cash goes to me to make it fair. Okay, and then she keeps 100 minus 20, 80% of the cash. Cash is easily divisible. Make change for a $10,000 bill or whatever it might be. I don't think they exist. Okay, so we can check it. Let's see how I did. First of all, I got 35 points plus 10 points plus 15 points. I got 3 items plus part of a fourth. So looking back at the screen, I got the jewelry too. Let's put a big check mark there because we first transferred that one over and we got part of the cash and she got part of the cash. So I got actually 4 items. So 35 plus 10 plus 15, they're all small ticket items. Plus this number, which works out to be a 4, does add up to 64 points. Probably would be a little easier to look at how the sister did. She got all 40 points for the car, so that's a big ticket item, and then 80% of the 30 points involved. And that's going to be 24 points, and 40 plus 24 is 64. They're both, as they say, 64% satisfied, and that is the best we can do from an objective standpoint. Now, if somebody like changes their minds and say, oh, this car, I don't like this car anymore, or something like that, well, we can't help you. We've already got this going, and it's already started. And there might be lawyers involved or something like that, but at least the math isn't all that difficult. It's just a matter of sizing up how far along that critical item you need to go to make it fair. If you're behind, you have to meet part way over. Turned out it was 20% of the way on the cash line to make it fair. Now, we're not putting cash amounts on everything. That's for something from the next section, which we'll get to later, next part of 8.3, but not quite yet. Okay, so we have what's called, and we can give you an example here, I suppose. We could look at that later on. But for now, let's just look at this one here, example 8.15, the adjusted winner procedure. And this is just a review of what happened here. Each of 2 bids, people making a bid, totals 100 points. So you have to add up to 100 points. Just to take a quick look here, 35 plus 10 is 45, and 20 is 65, 15 more is 80, and 20 is 100. So I have 100 points, and of course 10 and 10 and 40 and 10 and 30 does up to 100 points apiece. So yes, we have checked that box. The initial division of items, each item goes to the higher bidder. That's pretty simple, just award to the higher bidder. But tied items are held for now. The higher score is the point leader, and the lesser score is the trailer, so to speak. Tied items go to the leader temporarily, so there's no lead changes. We don't have to make any major adjustments in the beginning. And then we look at the ratio, leader over trailer. So the bids, this ratio is always greater than or equal to 1. If you ever get a number less than 1, you've done it incorrectly. So then you transfer some of the items, and you go in order of increasing ratios. As doing so does not change the lead. But when you see that you would change the lead, and very often it's very intuitive, you don't have to crunch the numbers. There'd be kind of a big group in the middle, and that's going to switch you from leader to trailer, vice versa. That's critical item. That's the one that has to be divided up as best as possible. So this is the English version of the equation we just used. Give P% of the critical item to the trailer from the leader. So that's important. So that evens it out from the leader with the following equation. So the trailer score adds in a certain amount, P times the trader's bid, and then the leader score subtracts a certain amount. So they reach an equilibrium point somewhere in there. The P will be the same, but the bids may not be the same. So if somebody puts a heavier weight on something, like we saw 30 versus 20, that would change their rate of change, so to speak, but we don't need to get into that kind of detail very much. So let's take a look at example 8.15. This one has to do with inheritance, John versus Faye. And they have gotten to rank a vacation condominium, a red 1962 GT Hawk, a family silver set, and Dad's cap and gown from Yale, I guess. And so, first of all, we take a look and see who wins the head-to-head battle, so to speak. And right now, Faye has won the condominium. They both thought it was very heavy on the points, but then John saved just enough to get the car. I believe that's a car. And then silver set, but then the Yale cap and gown. So 3 items out of 4, but they're not as big ticket as the other would be. And Faye's the leader. You can just tell 65 is ahead of 50. So Faye has 65, of course, don't even add that. And then John has a total of 50 so far. So Faye's the leader, of course. Her condo, being the only thing she has to be the critical item. It's the only item there is. So there's nothing else it could be. So it's considered for the transfer. And yes, condos are not too hard to split up. You've got 52 weeks in a year or a certain number of days in a year, and you can divide it up that way. And that's what may happen. Looks like it will happen. So now we have to set up the equation. Now John starts it off. It doesn't really matter if you start off with the trader or not, but they're doing it that way. They're going to take on the critical item, the condo is the critical item. So it has to be divided up week by week or day by day perhaps. And so we have to take a look at the points that were given. Plus, first we have to do the regular points. So John has 50 points. We already added that up, and we already saw that originally Faye has 65 points. So those are out of commission. And then ironically, we have to then put in for the condo, which is the critical item. I'll just say CI, although it looks like confidence interval, how they've weighted it. John didn't put as much weight as Faye did. So when John gains something, he doesn't gain quite as many points, and Faye loses even more points. So notice the big minus sign on Faye's loss of part of the condo, and slightly less heavy 50 on John's gain of his part of the condo. So of course there's some algebra which we assume is pretty routine, but if you add 65p to each side, then you would get 50 plus, and you add 65p, this is a p, to 50p. Just doing a little bit of algebra for you in case you're rusty at this. You shouldn't be too rusty at it. Plus 115p is equal to 65, and of course then these zero out. The idea is to zero out one of the terms. And then we should subtract 50 from each side, and there's a little bit of algebra here, and we get 15 equal to 115p, which is very strange, but that's the way it worked out. And so that ratio is pretty low. They weren't that far apart in points, apparently, but also remember the condo's carrying heavy weight, at least 50 points. So that ratio, the ratio is all we're looking for, is 0.13 rounded to 2 decimal places. And so John gets 13% of the condo from Faye, but Faye gets to keep 100 minus that, 87%. So it's a 87-13. Pretty much a 7-to-1 ratio on that, by the way, but that doesn't matter much. So John gets a lot of stuff. Gets a little bit of everything. Gets the hawk, the silver, the cap and gown, and partial ownership of the condo. Wow, came out doing pretty well, I guess. But we got Faye only getting 87% ownership of the condo and nothing else. But basically has the condo most of the time. So when you prorate this out to 52 weeks a year, let's just say 0.13 times 52, this number is approximately 7 weeks. And then, of course, by subtracting 52 minus 7, or if you'd like to just take 0.87 times 52, this is about 45 weeks. So they'd have to arrange which gets which week, and if there's a special holiday or occasion, they'd have to work out that between themselves. It's not going to solve all their problems, okay? But it does get a fair structure in place for these type of awkward situations. The best of friends, relative-wise, may become bitter towards each other after, or animosity could set in when hard feelings get in control. And so this is a fair way as possible. Of course, people really have to think about how many points to give, and maybe you might need to consult with somebody about that, because if you make the wrong move, you may just give away too much, or whatever else may happen. How about this example here? Use the adjusted winner procedure, which is what we're talking about, to fairly divide the following items. So, Ann versus Becky, A versus B. There's a laptop, DVDs rather, MP3 player, tablet, and TV. And so what we have here is the head-to-head battle. As they put down their points, they both add up to 100. That's important. We're not going to have you pick points. We'll give you pre-assigned points. And so right now, laptop seems to go to Ann. DVDs is a tie, we'll wait on that. MP3 player barely goes to Ann. And tablet does go to Ann by a long ways. And the TV, by a long ways, goes to Becky. So Becky won the TV. The DVDs are still up in the air. So now we look at the amount of points. Becky has 40. And Ann has, well, 37 and 50 is 87. So 87 points. And that's what they're saying over here. And Becky has 40. So there's a bit of discrepancy here. Things need to be changed just a little bit. So now we look at, Becky being kind of the trader needs to pick up something of these 4 items. So the fairest way to go is to look at the ratios and go in increasing order. When it's a tie, this will be the first one we look at. So I'll put a little ordering here. That's a 1. So that's like the first thing we'll be looking at. Then the second one will be 1.2 for the MP3 player, which means that, remember, it's leader over trader. It's going to be A over B, because A is the leader, and B is the trader. So that means 1.2. That'll go next. 1.20, by the way. And third, although it's very close, would be ratio for the laptop, ratio of 1.25. And of course, the tablet is probably not going to be obtained because that's over a 3 on the ratio. So if you really want it that much, you can have it. Spend all your points on one item. You're probably going to get it, but what about the rest of it? And that Ann seems to be doing pretty well in the rest of it too. So she got pretty lucky so far. But now she's got to make up the difference. So we need to find out what the critical item would be. So the DVDs and MP3s are transferred. So that's what we'll do. We'll go in order, and the DVD goes first, and that was because it was a tie. And so let me show you how things will change. They say the DVDs go first, so that means that Ann loses 5, and Becky gains 5. That's not going to switch this. 82 to 35. I'm not going to write that down. So we take care of that, and then we move on to the next one. And that's going to be the MP3 player. So Ann gives that one up too. That's worth 6 points to her, only worth 5 to Becky. So notice how Ann loses more than Becky gains. Very strange. Let's see where we are so far after 2 rounds of this equilibrium thing. Now Becky's at 50. You might think that's enough, but no, these numbers typically go higher than 50. So 87 minus 11 is 76. So right now, Ann has 76, Becky has 50. And that's what, okay, Ann's now 81. Is that correct? That doesn't look right. Let me just double check this. That's not what I remember seeing. Okay, 81. Oh, she had 92 points. That's why, 92 points. So, yeah, what happened was I forgot. She got the tied one. So I forgot about the tied procedure. So initially she would get the extra 5. So she did have 92. There we go. So the tie goes to the leader. So this is where that goes. So right now she's got 4 items. But 92 minus 11, that's your 81. So that's my fault. Sorry. So she has 81. Becky's still 50. And even though 2 extra items have been given away, this still doesn't look very close. So now we take a look at the laptop. Why is it the critical item? Well, the laptop has so many points involved. It's not too hard to see. If Ann gives away the laptop, should be down to 31. That cannot be a winner. And you add 40 to the 50. Wow, it'd be really lopsided. So that's the critical item, the laptop. Okay, so laptop is the critical item. So we have to divide up the use of the laptop, and this must be considering they live close together and can share. Because if it wasn't, that would be another problem that we will not be able to deal with. So let's see. We have Becky's score was 50. Let's just start with the scores. She's the trader. Ann has 81. So start with those. Start those with one on the one side of the equation, one on the other side. And then we see what Becky would gain in terms of her point values as she gets part of the laptop. Well, Becky, which is now on the right side, had 40 points for the laptop. Ann had 50. So Becky will only gain 40 as Ann loses 50. But there's still an equilibrium point here. So Becky gains 40 for every percent and loses 50 for every percent. So as I put a little bit more algebra in and add 50p to each side, then we would have 50 plus 90p equals 81. And as I add 50p, let me just say that over here, to each side, of course those will cancel on the right side. So now we need to get the non-p units over to the other side, so subtract 50. Now 90p is equal to 31. And that's what they say too. So when you take 31 over 90 and round to 2 decimal places, that means Becky gets what she got, the DVD. This is a mistake. Somehow they put tapes in. That's an old reference that doesn't matter. Anyway, she got the DVDs, the MP3 player, the TV, and 34% of the laptop. Let's review the list here. We switched the two items over, remember? So we transferred the DVDs and the MP3s over. Let me see if I can update this list. So the DVDs went back over to Becky, and the MP3s went over to Becky, and then let's just see. We've got the laptop that's being divided up. So I made a real mess there on that list. Let me just go back here. So as we recall, the DVDs were transferred over to Becky, who was the trader. And then MP3 was transferred over to Becky, who was the trader. She already got the TV. That was from the beginning part. And the critical item, the one that gets split up, is the laptop. It's roughly a 1/3, 2/3 situation, roughly. So Ann gets the tablet and remaining 66 of the laptop. This is as fair as it can be for a party of two, considering, of course, that neither party changes their mind about point allocation. There are some problems with this procedure, for example, parties of 3 or more, critical items being non-dividable, etc. If you'll excuse me for just a second, there's something I have to do very quickly. Okay, I'm back. I'm sorry for the interruption. Just fast forward if there are any pauses like that. Let's see how far we can get into the next part here. Here we have the Naster procedure. It's a method for dividing items amongst several parties, and it does not require dividing ownership of items. The procedure is based on having the parties assign monetary value to each item, their bid, kind of like we did with the points. But the bidding is done in secret without any knowledge of any other's bids. Kind of like before. It isn't like we give away what we put points on. But this one's a little bit different, and we have like several items to be divided. Well, in this case, we have a simple example. I take it back. There's only one item to be divided. That's the automobile, the car. So the 4 people involved are entitled to 1/4 of the car. Each person places a bid, and each will end up with a value of at least 1/4 of his bid. That's the nice thing about this procedure. You're guaranteed at least 1/4, 1/3, 1/5, whatever it may be. So that's kind of a sweet situation. And of course, the easy way would be just to sell the car and divide up the proceeds. But let's assume that somebody really wants to keep the car. So that makes it more complicated. So they have to put in some kind of a bid. So here they've all bid, and Abe bid 30,000, Ben bid 23, and Caleb bid 28, and Dan bid 25. Abe has bid the most money. Abe will get to keep the car, but he has to have enough cash to make it fair for everybody else. That's the catch. So let's see what we can see about the next slide. Okay, so as we said before, those are the bids. Highest bidder gets the car. But that's the entire estate. Not so complicated, but he's only entitled to 1/4. That's $7,500. $7,500, what he bid, by the way. So the leader sets the standard for what it's worth. So $7,500 is 30,000 divided by 4. Okay, so we have $7,500, and so now we have this strange thing that happens. The remaining part of it goes into a kitty, which will be kind of redistributed. and each of the others withdraws 1/4 of what they assigned as the value of the car. So some ways you have incentive for a high bid, and some ways you don't. If you really want the car, bid high. If you don't, bid just enough so you won't have to buy the car. If you bid like $100, you're going to get 1/4 of $100, and that would not be too good. So anyway, Ben takes 1/4 of his bid. He bid 23,000, sorry, and so he's entitled to 5750. Caleb gets 1/4 of 28,000. That's 7,000. Higher bid, but came in second, so get a little more money because he put more value on it. And Dan takes 1/4 of the 25,000, kind of a middle bid of 6,250. So they take it from the kitty because Ben's already done, or Abe's already done his due diligence. He gets 7,500 of this outright, but the other 3/4 he has to give away into the kitty. Kitty's like a holding area until they decide what to do with it. It isn't like a cat. Well, anyway, Ben takes 1/4, Caleb takes 1/4, Dan takes 1/4. It's different money because they put different values. That's the tricky part of it. So we've withdrawn that amount of money, 19,000. Interesting. So we get into this kind of an accounting process. So if you like accounting, you'll love this part. Well, anyway, the book, by the way, does go a little bit differently than the slide presentation. They've already gone ahead and put in the 30,000 and the 7,500. So he really got to keep. Where'd this number come from? Well, Abe got to keep 7,500, but he has to spend 30,000. So they're going to just save a little time and just call that a negative 22,500, which goes to the kitty. That's the important part. The plus 22,500 is going to the kitty, and that gets to be carved up. So these people take their initial share, and as we saw, that was minus the 19,000 as we saw on the other slide. That's what these numbers are, 19,000. So there's kind of an overage there. There's more money to give away. How about that? Well, here's the thing. That gets divided up exactly by 4. There's no weighted situation at all. So the 3,500 will be divided by 4. Each person gets 1/4 of the value he assigned to the car, plus this sort of correction factor is never going to be negative. That's the good news. It isn't like, oh, suddenly you got to pay $500. No, you get a little bonus on it. Sometimes it's a big bonus. Okay? There's some math involved. I don't need to go into the details, but it depends on whether they all kind of, if there's big differences between the bids or if they're all roughly the same. We're not going to get into ties. Ties is a special case. We're not going to do ties here. But they do get an extra 875 because the whole idea is the kitty has to be down to 0. We're not going to have a cat walk away with a bunch of dollar bills. No, that's not going to happen. So then, kind of balance the books here. We get to add in 875. So what happens is Abe got the car, so that's a big advantage. But then he doesn't owe 22,500. He owes a little less than that because he got almost $900 coming back to him. So that's what he owes. And it's split up in the following way. Let's look at the positive side of things. None of these people got the car, but they're getting cash, getting roughly 1/4 of what it's worth. But Ben didn't value it too highly. He won't get so much back for it. And he'll get the bonus from the kitty that was kind of left over, unclaimed money. So he's going to get to keep $6,625. Caleb valued it second highest, so he's going to get the most cash out of this. $7,000 for him, but he gets the standard $875 for a total of $78. That's $78.75. Another mistake here. I just now saw that, so that's a little typo there. Dan valued it in the middle, and so he gets the $6,250 plus the $875. So he gets to collect $7,125. Together, these numbers will add up to the money that Abe is paying. So Abe is paying Ben the $6,625. He's paying Caleb the $78.75. He's paying Dan $7,125. And there may be some animosity between Ben and Caleb here because there's about a $1,200 difference, $1,250 difference. But then Caleb would say, gee, I really wanted that car and I thought I had a winning bid, but I only came in second. So at least I get more cash for this. And Ben could say, oh, I didn't really want the car that much. He thought he did. He came in number 4, kind of a distant 4th, by the way. So he's not entitled to quite as much as they split it up. So this is a fair division, a fair share from an objective point of view that is done and expanded upon in the other examples. So to review, Each person bids a secret dollar amount for each item to be divided. For each item separately, the item is given to the person who bid the most. No ties are allowed right now. So we do give the item, but then they typically will have to make up the difference in cash. So the winner contributes the difference of their vote and their share to a kitty for like a first round. So those that don't win withdraw their share of each of the bids from the kitty. And that varies depending on how they ranked it. So if you really don't want it, but you want a lot of cash, it'd be really tough to try to get to be number 2. And I guess if you did a lot of research or got hints from other people, maybe you could try to do that. But a lot of this is just, if you don't want the car, don't bid very much, and then don't expect much cash either. If you really want the car, bid a lot, but then you're going to have to pay a bunch of cash to people because you perhaps overbid. So the idea is to hit that sweet spot in the middle where either you get the car and spend out not too much money, or you get a lot of money, and at least but you don't get the car though. Maybe you get a ride in the car someday. Well, anyway, step 3: the money left in the kitty, and there will be almost always money left in the kitty, a positive amount, and it's divided equally amongst the bidders. So that's where the 875 came in, because it doesn't have a perfect fit on those. Let's see if we can just take a look at the beginning of another example, which we will save for next time. A family farm is to be divided. Parts of the farm are to be bid on by 3 family members. Okay, there's 3 parts of the farm. There's the farmhouse, the wheat fields, the cattle operations. And you can see all the money, all in thousands, is what's been bid. And the beginning part is pretty easy. I think I can take care of that right now. As far as the farmhouse is concerned, Julie bid the most. Guess who's going to get the farmhouse? Julie gets the farmhouse. Put a check mark there if I can get the pen to work. And the other 2 do not get that. The wheat fields, though, Ann bid $450,000 versus $390 versus $210. So Ann will get the wheat fields. And then comes the cattle operations. Ann once again is the leader with $750,000. Julie way underbid on that one. So right now, Ann has won the wheat fields and the cattle operations. Julie has won the farmhouse. So bottom line on this, Ann's better have a lot of cash to make it good for the rest of them, to get as close to a third as possible. Steve is just getting all cash. He didn't win any part of the farm, but he's going to collect a lot of cash. Julie is in between. Julie may or may not get cash, but her farmhouse wasn't worth as much as the wheat field or that cattle operations, so I'll bet she's getting cash in addition to the farmhouse. But not as much cash as Steve, who got nothing. He's only getting cash. Ann will get basically 2/3 of the farm, but she better have a lot of cash to spend or come up with some sort of payment plan. 2 of my cousins reached an agreement there with their inheritance from their father, my uncle, and they had to come up with something. And apparently it didn't go extremely well, from what I understand. I don't know too many of the details. It would be interesting to find out what method he used. And when I get up to Idaho this summer, I need to ask him for professional reasons what method did he use. Well, anyway, Julie gets the farmhouse, Ann gets the wheat field and cattle operations, as we just said. And Steve will not get any of the farm, but he will get cash. And what they're not saying here is that Ann will be spending a lot of cash. And it looks like Julie will get a little bit of cash. I'll write that in small letters. And Steve will get lots of cash. They even say it right there. So let's just take a quick preview look. I'm not going to run through this yet, but they go through something similar to before, except now we have 3 different items to go through. And you can take a look at the book and see how they've explained it. It's a rather involved example, perhaps, and the slideshow has bundled things together a little bit to make it just a little bit easier, but here my job will be, when we're back to the live class, to try to explain exactly how that worked out for everybody. And as time allows, we could try the try it yourself that goes with that at the end of the section. Plus there's a couple of other try it yourselves I'd like to work on as well. And maybe some problems from the book. That would be a little bit less detailed than this, and would be certainly good. And I'm going to save a few for you to work on as well. The WebAssign should be available by now, and you should be able to start working on 8.3. This is another mistake I just now noticed. This is actually Chapter 8 For some reason, they messed up on this slide. So sorry about that. There are a few mistakes here. Okay, so we'll leave this right here, and we'll pick up where we left this in the live classes for Wednesday, Thursday of next week, which will be April 28 and 29, the live classes there. We're coming close to the end, and we're down to basically a section and a half to go after this lecture. So we'll have some time to review, and that'll be good. We'll get to the electoral college coming up as our last subject. Okay, I guess that's all I have. We'll let you go, and have a nice weekend, and be sure to email me if you have any issues, and those tests should be graded very soon. Okay, bye-bye.